Tensions flared in downtown Los Angeles yesterday evening as thousands of protesters marched through the streets calling for an end to police brutality and systemic racism after the guilty verdict in the murder of George Floyd. But things got really chaotic when all of a sudden some random dude decided to start shooting his gun into the air and then also at the police. This shooting incident has left 4 people wounded and 1 LAPD officer in critical condition, and Talk about what led up to that moment right here on the Daily News Report. It's Monday, April 26th, 2021. But first, let us look at some breaking news coming out of Minneapolis, where 3 people were shot during a protest there last night, according to police. 2 men and a woman were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries after officers heard multiple gunshots near the intersection of 38th and Chicago streets around 9:30 p.m. The victim, their ages, and what led up to the shooting are not yet known. Cops have also released very few details surrounding the incident, but say they do not believe the injuries are connected to any other ongoing investigations. Police did increase their presence in downtown Minneapolis this weekend in anticipation of large crowds following the guilty verdict against Derek Chauvin. On Friday, authorities urged people to avoid downtown Minneapolis and the 3rd Police Precinct as they anticipated potential unrest. In response to the announcement, some businesses boarded up their windows and the National Guard was put on standby. So far, no damage or destruction has been reported. In LA, it was a different story as tensions flared during a largely peaceful protest over the weekend. Thousands of people gathered in downtown LA Saturday afternoon calling for an end to police brutality and systemic racism. The crowd began to march around 6 p.m. from Pershing Square, which is where the tensions started to rise. A large group of protesters stopped traffic near Staples Center, prompting a heavy police presence to show up on the scene. While most of the demonstration remained peaceful, some people began throwing bottles and other objects at officers. Police responded by using less lethal force, including the 40mm launcher, which fires rubber bullets, and the sting ball grenade, which is basically like a giant ball filled with smaller projectiles. However, this did little to deter the protesters who continued to hurl bottles and other items at the police. At one point, someone even threw a Molotov cocktail at the officers. According to the LAPD, they said at least 12 officers were injured during the course of the evening, with one in critical but stable condition. The chaos didn't stop there because just when things started to calm down, a man began firing a handgun into the air, which prompted the LAPD to call in a full SWAT team to the area. Witnesses captured video of the suspect firing multiple rounds from his weapon while standing on top of a building. You can see in the video how the crowd reacts after the shots are fired and begin to run away. We're also learning now that the gunman actually aimed at the officers and fired multiple rounds directly at them, which is considered an act of insurrection by the LAPD and will likely result in more charges being filed against him. According to LAPD Chief Michelle Moore, the gunman in this case is identified as 24-year-old Dejini Tavares Anderson. He was arrested shortly after the shooting and is facing several charges, including attempted murder of a police officer, assault with a firearm on a police officer, 11 counts of aggravated assault on a peace officer, 11 counts of assault with a deadly weapon on a peace officer, and 1 count of firing a handgun at an inhabited dwelling. All the charges are felonies except for 1 misdemeanor count of possession of a firearm by a felon. La Mayor Eric Garcetti said, "There is no place in our society for what we saw today. An attack on our officers is an attack on our democracy. During a press conference, the mayor added that he spoke to the officer who was critically wounded and is in stable condition. I want to tell you he is a hero, Garcetti said of the officer. He saved lives today. He is a credit to the LAPD and to our city. Now, if you watch this channel regularly, I do unusually comment on ongoing investigations because it is easy to get caught up in the emotional aspects of these cases and then present those emotions as facts. And I don't want to do that. But there's just a few thoughts that I'd like to share with you guys that might be relevant to this situation. First of all, I think we have to admit the possibility that some of the protesters were trying to provoke the police into using excessive force so they could then use that as justification for rioting and looting. For example, the Mojave, what does throwing a bottle or can at a police officer justify an officer using a 40 millimeters launcher? Absolutely nothing. And I'm not trying to make excuses for the behavior of these protests. What I am getting at is the fact that the police had every opportunity to walk away from this situation and de-escalate the conflict, but they chose not to. If a cop had simply walked away from the Molotov cocktail, for example, the guy hurling it probably would have just thrown it at another cop or maybe even at a building. But instead, the LAPD chose to engage, and that led to the escalation of violence as cops become more militarized and adopt a warrior mentality. Conflicts like this are only going to become more violent. And second of all, what provoked the gunman to start shooting? Was he agitated by the police using force against the protesters? Or did he come to the demonstration with the intent of committing murder? These are questions that need to be answered because we keep hearing this phrase, when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And this seems like a prime example of that. The fact that this guy stood on top of a building and started shooting wildly into the air shows that he wanted attention. Maybe he was trying to provoke the police into killing him? Or maybe he was hoping to join the chaos that was unfolding below him? Either way, this is what happens when you allow emotions to take control. The problem with law enforcement today is that they become too comfortable using excessive force and deadly force in many situations. And that needs to change. Officers should always exhaust every other option before resorting to deadly force. But in this particular case, the actions of the protesters also need to be called into question because it's pretty hard to justify throwing bottles and cans and other projectiles at the police. Lastly, I think it is important to note that there were thousands of people gathered at this protest and only one person committed an act of violence. Out of the entire crowd, only one person decided to open fire on the police. I think that goes to show you that the vast majority of people there were just exercising their right to free speech and peacefully protesting against police brutality. It was just a small handful of agitators looking for a fight that ruined it for everybody else. Now, if you're wondering why we didn't post a video yesterday, it's because we spent the day covering the events in real time. That meant that we had to stay up late into the night and early this morning working on this video. It's just the nature of the job, though. Whenever something big breaks, we have to drop everything and cover it. So I apologize for the delay, but rest assured, we'll be back to our regular posting schedule tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting us. We really appreciate it. And if you want to support us even further, consider becoming a member of our community. It is a great way to help us grow and keep producing these videos that hopefully you guys enjoy. Thanks again, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.